we think about World War II POW escape stories, it is normal to imagine this sort of scene. This is also another popular meme. Approximately 8,000 New Zealanders became prisoners of war in World War II. That was about 8% of those who served. A massive 716 escaped their captors. 714 of those occurred in Europe. The vast majority when the Italians pulled the pin and all but left the camp gates open. Just 2 New Zealanders successfully escaped the hands of the Japanese. This is their story, one of tenacity and courage. The 2 Kiwis that got away. Context, please. During World War II, some 140,000 Allied military personnel from the United States, Australia, Great Britain, Canada, Netherlands, India, China and New Zealand became prisoners of the Japanese. The number of successful escapes, called home runs, was small. Figures range from as little as 100 up to 375. The number of successful British escapes comprised around 50, and as you're about to hear, 4 of those went through the barbed wire along with New Zealanders. There are many reasons that prevented escapes on the scale of those seen in Europe. At the top of the list were 2 things. The first being the brutal and inhumane treatment of Allied prisoners of war meted out by the Japanese. Humiliated, starved and emancipated. The prisoners were rendered physically incapable of walking long distances. 1 in 3 Allied prisoners died of starvation and disease in Japanese captivity. Second to the top were the sheer distances required to reach friendly lines. This map is a good overview. Invariably, escape routes meant moving via nigh-on impossible malaria-filled jungles, or entailed vast feats of navigation over hundreds of miles of open seas. There were other deterrents as well. Recapture meant almost certain execution. Knowing your fellow prisoners would face punishment for your escape. Unlike Europe, it simply wasn't possible to blend in with the locals. That reason alone accounts for the high number of Allied escapees being of Indian or Chinese origin. Escapees were totally at the mercy of sympathetic locals, providing them with food. Faced the ever-present threat, they could be betrayed in the next village. These are what made any successful escape Herculean. Now to the Kiwis. The 2 major similarities of both escapes were they occurred from the same prison camp in Hong Kong, broadly took the same route. That camp was called Sham Shui Po, a former British military barracks that made a ready-made prison for the Japanese. Like all Japanese camps, the conditions were overcrowded and inhumane. Before I actually get to the actual escapes, let's have another look at that map so we can get our bearings. Royal Air Force pilot officer Crossley trained in New Zealand before being stationed in Malaysia, then volunteering for service in Hong Kong when shortly after the Japanese attacked. Crossley's unit flew Vickers wildebeests. All were destroyed on the ground. The 25-year-old Crossley now took the fight for Hong Kong to the Japanese as a machine gunner, part of a Navy unit. He was ultimately captured in December 1941. Joined 5,000 others in Sham Shui Po. He didn't remain there long. Just 5 weeks later, he teamed up with a captain and doctor from the Middlesex Regiment, and they made their escape. Sailing, then swimming to the mainland, all under a hail of Japanese bullets. Their intended target was Kunming in China, the front line in the war between China and Japan. The party headed north, travelling at night. Suffered 2 attacks by Chinese bandits who robbed them of their meagre possessions. Fortunately for them, shortly after those setbacks, they then encountered a Chinese guerrilla group who moved them from sympathetic village to village, until after 3 weeks they reached regular Chinese forces. They were all but safe now. Travelled by truck, rail and ferry to Kunming. All 3 were flown to Calcutta, arriving there on the 1st of April. Crossley was awarded the Military Cross for Distinguished Service, a rare award given he was a member of the Royal Air Force. Back in Sham Shui Po, the Japanese reduced rations, if that was at all possible, and electrified all the fences. Crossley went on to serve in other spheres of the war, including the Med. He passed away in 1958. I'm only going to touch on the outline of Goodwin's 1944 escape. The chief reason for this is he penned a book which outlined the full, gory details. Doing it justice is beyond my meagre resources. 870 miles, or 1,400 kilometres, travelling mostly by foot at night, along with his 2 British companions. A journey that took 3 months, and for which he was awarded the Order of the British Empire. One of the most astonishing escapes ever. Full stop. You'll hear this plea a lot on my videos. A movie, please. Born in Auckland, Goodwin served with the Royal Navy at the onshore base HMS Tamar in Hong Kong. He was 39 when captured in the fall of the city in December 1941. Like Crossley, 2 years prior, he went on the run with 2 British servicemen and relied heavily on Chinese forces and friendly villages for survival. I cannot recommend his book enough. Read it and you'll never complain about bad drivers again. Goodwin died in 1994. That, my friends, was a story of the 2 Kiwis that got away. Bravery at its best. Your like and share would be greatly appreciated. Bye for now.